Welcome back to We Want Picks. I'm Artem MMA, and I do apologize for the audio quality in this video. I am not at home at the moment, as you can see, and I will be using my laptop's inbuilt microphone to record this. But either way, I'm going to be predicting the PFL 2023 regular season lightweights and welterweights in this video. And as you can see, it's going to be a good card. You've got Shane Burgos on there. You've also got a bunch of other really good fighters on there, like Clay Collard, who's going to be making his return. We've also got Shane Mitchell and Nayib Lopez. That's a big one here because Nayib Lopez is 15-0. And it's going to be a great card. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. As always, we do have the We Want Picks Premium. If you want to know what it's all about, you can actually get a 3-day free trial by signing up and then using my code ARTEM. And then from there, you can decide if you do want to continue using the We Want Picks. But you can get a 3-day free trial using my code ARTEM. And we'll get straight into the prediction. So the first fight to kick off the card is going to be Magomed Umalatov taking on Dilano Taylor, and it really should be a pretty good one. Magomed Umalatov is a pure striker, and so is Dilano Taylor. Umalatov, although he trains at Eagles MMA, he doesn't really wrestle. I mean, he's probably got wrestling in the back pocket. We just don't really see it. He strikes. He struck for all 3 rounds against Leandro Silva in a pretty close fight as well. Both guys were getting hurt in that fight. Then he knocked out Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi, who's in the main event of this card as well. And Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi is a very good prospect. He's got some great wins on his record. And that was a great win as well after a little bit of a layoff. And Dilano Taylor, he's also a pure striker. So it's going to be a really good card. A really good fight to kick off the card. It is going to be a great card, but it's going to be a really good fight to kick off the card as well. Taylor's going to be a little bit longer, and he probably will try to fight from range, whereas Umalatov probably will kind of crash the distance a little bit, maybe throw a little bit more hooks, and Dilano will probably be throwing more straight shots, more lead kicks. You know what I mean? I've got Umalatov by knockout, though. I think he does close the distance and land something. I was kind of thinking Umalatov by decision, but the fact that he KO'd Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi, I mean, that's really a good win. That's a really good win. He looked great in that fight, too, so I've got him to win this one here. We move on to Carlos Leal taking on David Zawada. And I don't pick PFL underdogs very often. I like David Zawada in this matchup. I did watch his fights. I watched his UFC fights as well. And I watched Carlos Leal. And Carlos Leal's got like a team that follows him around and yells out his surname during his fights. It's really annoying. But David Zawada, I really like what I see out of him. He had a really bad UFC run. He went 1-4, but in hindsight, man, maybe he just fought the wrong guys because he fought Li Jingliang, who went on to be ranked. I think he's just outside the rankings right now. He beat Abubakar Nurmagomedov by submission and got a performance bonus for that. He lost to Ramazan Emeev in a pretty close fight. Both guys got takedowns. Both guys were landing shots. And then Alex Morono beats him by decision. David Zawada did try and take him down a couple of times in that matchup. And that was kind of when he got cut. But Alex Morono's really good himself. And earlier on in his UFC career, because he went 1-4, he had a fight of the night bonus with Danny Roberts. So David Zawada got a performance bonus and a fight of the night bonus in the UFC. But unfortunately, just didn't have a good enough run to stay in the promotion. He bounced back against Orhan Cartel, and he's like a -500 favorite against him in Octagon. And he beat up Orhan Cartel on the feet. He beat him up badly when he got the fight to the ground as well. He took him down twice. Orhan Cartel was grabbing the fence all the time, grabbed the top of the fence to prevent a takedown as well. The ref did nothing about it. But it says it's a doctor stoppage, but I don't know. I feel like it was more of a retirement on the stall than anything. I just don't think Orhan Cartel wanted to go out for that second round, and the doctor come in and something was wrong. I think it was something with his eye, with Orhan's eye, but I couldn't tell because the commentary wasn't in English. But yeah, I feel like it was more of a retirement on the stall than anything. Zawada just beat him up, especially when he got the fight to the ground, and that's what I like in this fight. You know, both guys are pretty good strikers. Carlos Leal's decent as well, well-rounded, but on the feet, I mean, maybe Carlos Leal does have an advantage. He didn't look too bad against Sadibou. He tried to get the back of Sadibou a couple of times, and he did. But David Zawada, if he can get the fight to the ground, he's got some pretty brutal ground and pound himself, and he's not a bad striker. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. I might be missing something key here because he's a +200 underdog. I think Carlos Leal's win over Ray Cooper III is kind of what's giving him such like a good like raise, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, Ray Cooper III was injured in that fight and he missed weight by like 8 pounds. So I don't rate that win too highly. I think David Zawada wins in this one here. I do think he wins by decision. I think he's going to be taking down Carlos Leal. And on the feet, he's going to have his own success. So give me the massive underdog or the plus 200 underdog in David Zawada in this matchup. Denis Goltsov is going to be taking on Patrick Brady. They were meant to fight last week. Patrick Brady was meant to fight last week against a different opponent, and Denis Goltsov is stepping in on a week's notice, but honestly, I don't think it matters. I think Goltsov gets it done. Patrick Brady was meant to fight Mikhail Andrasak, and Andrasak's pulled out of a lot of fights in the PFL, actually, but Goltsov's now stepping in. I think Goltsov beats Brady. He's a minus 600 favourite for a reason, my most confident pick on the card. No disrespect to Patrick Brady, but this is a massive step up in competition from the guys that he's been fighting. You know, he's 5-0, but a win over 5-2 opponent, 2-3, 4-8, 2-4. Goltsov just beat Maurice Green, you know, John Jones' training partner, who just got a win in PFL last week and made me look really stupid. So thanks for that, Maurice Green. But you know, Cody Goodale's 5-1, not the best win, I guess, but you know, he's just got better wins than Patrick Brady does. And I think Goltsov, he is going to take Patrick Brady down. I think he is going to ground and pound him. Brady's a good grappler too. He likes to offensively wrestle, but Goltsov's going to be so much bigger than him, man. He's 6'5". And he's also the better wrestler as well. I think Goltsov's going to take Brady down and just win by ground and pounds. Maybe Brady has success at the start, but you know, I haven't seen Brady look incredible after the first or the second rounds. You know, when he fought Yama's Wildman, he kind of gassed out a little bit. I think Denis Goltsov's going to be there for all 3 rounds, so I think he gets it done that way. Moving on up the card, we've got Clay Collard taking on at Yamato Nishikawa, and if you didn't know, Yamato Nishikawa was actually very briefly signed to the UFC, but he had a contract dispute with, I believe it was Schulte and UFC, and I guess UFC just never ended up eventually picking him up, but he was actually meant to fight Magomed Mustafayev, but I believe it was UFC 280, and yeah, Nishikawa had a contract dispute. Apparently, Mustafayev pulled out, was what Yamato was trying to say, but I don't really know what happened. PFL got him anyway, is what matters. And Yamato Nishikawa is the kind of guy that I really do wish UFC had, because I don't think he's going to have the best run in PFL. He's only 20 years old. He's slightly younger than me. And man, this guy's already 21-3 in MMA. So he's then super active. I believe he's made his pro debut when he's like 16 years old as well, and he's just fought all the time. And now he's getting a massive step up in competition, though, because the guys that he's beating are not as good as Clay Collard, and Clay Collard is a pretty confident pick for me. Clay Collard, if you don't know who he is, he's a pretty good boxer in MMA, he really is, and he had a really good win over Anthony Pettis, here it is, 2 years ago, and then in my opinion, and many other people's opinions as well, he beat Raush Manfio. That was a really bad PFL decision. And Alex Martinez, I thought he'd be Alex Martinez as well. And so does pretty much everyone as well. You go to MMA Decisions, all 3 people that did upload it to that are part of the media have it for Clay Collard as well. So he's just been getting unlucky on decisions. But I think Clay Collard beats Yamato Nishikawa. Yamato is well-rounded. Most of his wins are by KO, but he's got submissions as well in there. But I think Clay Collard can keep this one on the feet. He's going to be a lot bigger than Yamato as well. Yamato's not the biggest lightweight in the world. And I think Collard just beats him with better boxing and better striking. So give me Clay Collard by decision. I think Collard's probably going to have enough of PFL judges eventually and start throwing 125% into his shots. But maybe he gets a KO, but I do have Collard to win. Yamato's got such a nice record, especially being 20 years old as well. I don't think he's going to go on to do something, but being in the PFL tournament is going to be pretty rough because there's a lot of good guys in there, you know what I mean? But the guys that he's beating just aren't as good as Clay Collard, and they're just not as good as the guys that Clay Collard's been fighting and beating. So give me Clay Collard. I'm going to go with a decision, but maybe he gets a KO. I'm not too sure. And now we move on to a big one. I think this was actually meant to be the main event for a long time, but now it's been pushed down into the prelims because I believe that the prelims are on ESPN for PFL. And then the main card's going to be it's on DAZN in New Zealand, but I think it's on something else in USA. But because of the prelims being on ESPN, they obviously want to have some banger fights in the prelims. So we've got OAM taking on Shane Burgos. And I've kind of convinced myself into picking Shane Burgos. I was all over OAM at the start, but then I kind of looked into Shane Burgos and I watched his fights and I looked at his stats. I know like you can't really predict MMA based on just stats, but when you watch his fights and then put the stats beside it, you're like, yeah, this is actually a pretty winnable matchup for Shane Burgos. Shane Burgos' takedown defense in the UFC was 91%, and he defended 14 takedowns against Billy Q. Billy Q went 0 for 14 on UFC stats. Magomedkerimov went 3 for 19 on UFC stats, so he defended 16 takedowns against Magomedkerimov. Josh Emmett went 1 for 1 on takedowns, and I believe he went. Charles Jourdain didn't shoot for a takedown on him either, but you can say that was at 145 pounds all you want, and that kind of is like my big thinking. Like, is OAM going to be that much bigger than Burgos? And I kind of don't really think so, because Shane Burgos hasn't fought in a long time. You know, the last time he fought was 8 months ago. He's been signed to the PFL for a long time. He probably knew that he was going to fight at 155 for a while, so I've kind of trusting him to build into a 155-pound frame. And at 5'11", he's going to be taller than OAM. OAM is not small for 155, that's for sure. And he is a wrestler, and that's what he's going to try and do. He's going to go for takedowns. And he's a pretty good striker on the feet. I mean, he did KO Stevie Ray only 4 months ago, and now he's coming back into it. But I do have Shane Burgos to win this fight. I was also thinking as well, like PFL champion, you know, Shane Burgos was kind of at like the bottom of the rankings for a while. Like how does it translate? Like, you can't do that. You've got to look at fighter versus fighter. I think Shane Burgos, man, he's the much better boxer. He's the much better striker. He's got really good takedown defense as well. If OAM gets the fight to the grounds, and if he can do it consistently, he's going to win the fight for sure. But if Shane Burgos' takedown defense is as good at 155 as it was at 145, and he has built into a 155-pound frame, I think he gets it done over OAM. I don't know if he gets a KO, but I think he gets a decision. But maybe it's a really dumb pick. I feel like this could be a really bad pick. Maybe I could look stupid, but I just think that there's a very good chance Shane Burgos gets this one done. And I think he's the better striker, and I think he's going to force the fight to stay on the feet with his takedown defense. So give me Shane Burgos, because he's the one that's probably going to control where the fight goes. And if he wants to, he can probably get a takedown himself. I wouldn't really recommend it, but, you know, it's not like Shane Burgos hasn't gone for takedowns in the past. You know, he took down Charles Jourdain twice. So, be interesting. We'll move on now to Zach Juusola taking on Brandon Jenkins. I do have Brandon Jenkins by knockout in this one here. Zach Juusola fought on short notice against the 16-2 Joseph Whitner, who was actually meant to fight Quamela Tony, the guy that beat Alex Bahia in MMA before he even made it into the UFC. And Joseph Whitner, in hindsight, really padded record. Like, you look at it on paper, it is a pretty padded record, but man, the way that Zach Juusola just kind of put it on him and beat him up, you know, he looked really good in that fight. But Brandon Jenkins was actually rumored to be on the Ultimate Fighter as well, and he's been massive for 155 as well. In the UFC, had a pretty bad run, lost to Zhu Rong, didn't look that good in the fight, and then lost to Drakkar Klose, which in hindsight was just a weird matchup, because Drakkar Klose was ranked at number 15 at one point. He's kind of bobbing in and out of that number 15 ranking spot, so I don't know. But then Brandon Jenkins got released, was rumored to be on the Ultimate Fighter. The Conor McGregor season just wasn't. And now he's here, fighting at 170 pounds. I don't mind Jenkins at 170 pounds. He's a big dude anyway, especially for 155. He does have a good training camp behind him as well. It just doesn't really seem like he can put everything together, but he's got KO power on the feet for sure. He's not the best grappler in the world, but I do think if the fight's on the feet, he's going to be dangerous. And I think he's going to be dangerous to knock out Jenkins. So I do, to knock out Juusola. So I've got Brandon Jenkins to win by knockout. As we move up the card, we've now got Bruno Miranda taking on Ahmed Amir, and this is a very close fight, and it kind of is represented by the odds. I'm going with Bruno Miranda by knockout, but Ahmed Amir really could win this fight, and if he does, I wouldn't be that surprised at all. Ahmed Amir is a former Egyptian national wrestling champion. All of his fights, if he wins, they're not that exciting. He doesn't really get many finishes. He does have a submission 3 years ago, but since then he took a 2-4 opponent the distance, and then he beat Amin Ayub by decision. Unfortunately for him, that's his best win, and it hasn't aged too well, but he did look pretty good in that fight. He kind of took down Amin Ayub kind of at will at the start of the fight, controlled the first few rounds. Not the most exciting sort of style, just kind of grinded on top, just did what he could to stay on top, really, and not get stood up. And then towards the end, though, when he did slow down, Amin Ayub kind of figured him out a little bit, started to defend the takedown, started to hit him with some good shots, but that's kind of Ahmed Amir's style. He will take you down, and he'll grind on you, and just kind of lay on top of you, really. It's not the most exciting in the world. Bruno Miranda, for the most part, I would say he's almost like a pure striker. All he really does do is strike. He doesn't really want the fight to be on the ground, but he's got very good takedown defense. He defended a lot of takedowns from his opponent, Carson Frey, who has a chin on them, because Carson Frey took a lot of damage from Miranda, because Bruno Miranda was hurting Carson Frey with almost everything that he threw at him. and Miranda eventually wore him down and got the TKO in the third round. But Bruno Miranda previously trained at Tiger Muay Thai. I don't know if he still does, but it kind of does show he's a very good striker. He's pretty well built for 155. He's 5'9", so he's a little bit shorter than a lot of his opponents, but he's very well built and he's got a lot of power in the hands. And I think Amir might have a lot of success early, but all it's going to take is a couple of good shots from Miranda, and Amir is pretty hittable on the feet. So I've got Miranda by KO. The Tapology votes have Miranda considerably. I'm not too sure why. Maybe everyone just kind of likes Miranda, but Miranda hasn't fought too much. He took a massive layoff between two fights there. Amir also hasn't been that active himself, but I do have Bruno Miranda to win that one. Let's move on. The next one is going to be Shane Mitchell versus Nayib Lopez. Nayib Lopez is 15-0. I'm very surprised that UFC hasn't picked Nayib Lopez up at all. So PFL's got him now, and he's a very good prospect, 15-0. A little bit of like a sketchy record every now and then. Every now and then he'll fight someone really good, but then every now and then he'll fight someone that's not really good. But he did beat someone very good in his last fight, Ivan Valenzuela, who fought on Dana White's Contender Series last year, and that was upper weight class at 185 pounds. And he didn't even look that small compared to Valenzuela, but he definitely was the smaller fighter in the cage there, and he did manage to get it done in the fourth round. He kind of took down Ivan Valenzuela whenever he wanted to, really, and he kind of ground and pounded him out in the fourth round. Both guys were very tired, though, towards the end of that fight. Shane Mitchell, I would say he's very well-rounded as well. A very good kickboxer. It is worth noting that Nayib Lopez on the feet doesn't really throw any kicks. It's kind of all boxing. Shane Mitchell will work the legs. He will kick the legs of Nayib Lopez, which would be interesting. And even then, he's a very good grappler as well, but he's having close-ish fights with opponents that are just levels below Nayib Lopez. Like his last win was over an 8-11 opponent. I couldn't find footage of that fight that wasn't behind a paywall, but I was able to find footage of all of his other fights, and they were a while ago. He's not fighting too often, and I like Nayib Lopez in this matchup. Nayib Lopez is one of those guys which I feel like should have gotten picked up by the UFC, because I think he's going to lose that really pretty beside that 15-0 at some points in this PFL tournament, but I don't think it's going to be against Shane Mitchell. I've got Nayib Lopez to win by decision. A lot of people have him by KO. I like Lopez by decision in this one here. I think he's going to take down Shane Mitchell kind of whenever he wants and just lay on top of him, land some pretty decent ground and pound it on the feet. He will box with Mitchell. But Mitchell, he's going to throw leg kicks, he's going to throw body kicks, which could hurt Lopez, but I think he's going to get done with a decision. So I've got Lopez by decision there. Raush Manfio taking on Alex Martinez. It looks like I'm going with another PFL underdog. I've got a couple of them on this card. So I think this is my third one for the card, which is a rarity for me. But I like Raush Manfio in this matchup here. I just don't rate Alex Martinez as highly as I rate Raush Manfio. Raush Manfio is a former $1 million winner. He's got really good wins on his record. He's got that win over Loic Radzhabov, who's now in the UFC, and just beat one of my favorite fighters, Esteban Ridovic. So good for Loic Radzhabov. Made me a very sad man when he won that fight. We'll move on. He beat Don Madge, former UFC fighter, very hyped up fighter as well, going into the tournament as well, because Don Madge, I think he was just released from the UFC because he had visa issues or something along those lines. So he got picked up by PFL, beat Nathan Williams, and then where he was really expected to do very well. He beat Freeze Yam in the UFC and Tay Edwards as well, but yeah, I think he just had visa issues or something went on with him, so he wasn't continued with the UFC. But my point is, Raush Manfio's beaten better guys than Alex Martinez in the past. I mean, he did lose to OAM, who ended up winning the whole thing, but he didn't beat Clay Collard, in my opinion. Clay Collard won that fight, as I said earlier. Stevie Ray fight as well was kind of closer than it should have been. That was Stevie Ray's return fight after retirement. He retired at a UFC event, and then he come back like 2 or 3 years later, fought Alex Martinez. Alex Martinez lost the first round, and then Stevie Ray kind of slowed down a bit, and Martinez took over towards the end. So I like Raush Manfio in this matchup as the underdog. I think he's going to win by decision, unless the judges do something funny like they have done in the past with the Clay Collard fight for Martinez. But I think that we're going to see Raush Manfio get it done in this matchup by decision. So he's talking about Stevie Ray throughout the video. We're going to start talking about him now because he does have those fights with Alex Martinez and Olivier Aubin-Mercier, which is why I've talked about it multiple times in the video. But he's also beaten Anthony Pettis twice in MMA, and one of them was by submission, which is impressive in itself. But the way that he did it too with the modified twister, and actually won a grappling event with the modified twister in 2021 as well. He's fighting Natan Schulte, who's also a very good grappler himself, so I do have Natan Schulte to win this matchup here, but I'm not as confident as I would be in any other minus 360 favorite. Maybe I'm getting a bad read on the fight, but I think Natan Schulte wins, but minus 360 is a favorite. I don't know, I think there's better closely lined fights I think you could bet on than a minus 360 favorite in Natan Schulte. But yeah, Stevie Ray, I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware, it's probably not really my place to comment, but Stevie Ray recently put out a GoFundMe for his daughter who is ill at the moment. And it was really, really cool to see how many people donated to that. So maybe Stevie Ray's got like a bit of motivation behind that, which could really help fuel his fighting as well. But I do have Natan Schulte to win. But I just kind of want to mention how happy I am for Stevie Ray. Obviously, it's a terrible situation that he's in, but it was really nice seeing all those donations go in. I donated like a very small amount. At the time, I'm a university student. I didn't have a lot of money, but it's a really difficult situation for Stevie Ray. So kind of commend him for fighting through that, and also very happy for him that he got the donations that he needed for the situation that it is. And I do have Schulte to win though by decision. Maybe there's a chance of a submission though, because Ray has been submitted a few times in his career, but it was a long time ago now. But I do have Schulte to win by decision. We move on up the card. It's going to be Magomedkerimov taking on Ben Igli. And you've kind of just got to go with the minus 900 favorite, Magomedkerimov, who is a decent striker, but he's a good wrestler and grappler himself. And I feel like Magomedkerimov could be one of the favorites to win the whole thing. So you kind of got to pick him to beat Ben Igli in this one here. Ben Igli is 14-4. He's a regional prospect, but he's 35 years old. So kind of losing the prospect status with the age. He hasn't fought in over a year. The last one he had was over a 7-2 opponent. He lost to Nick Brown, who's in Bellator right now as well. Mark Leminger's in Bellator right now, I think, as well. But point I'm trying to make is I'm really confident Magomedkerimov gets it done. He's been beating and fighting better opponents than Ben Igli. Just beat Gleison Tibau, who seems to be the guy that all of the Russian fighters have to fight before they can really step up in their competition, I guess. He knocked out Dilano Taylor, who's fighting on this card. He lost to Ray Cooper III in a fight that he was winning until he got KO'd in the finals there. He's beaten good guys. He beat Sadibusai, who won it last year as well. I got Magomedkerimov. I think if he can stay healthy and can fight in every single fight, I definitely can see Kerimov potentially winning the whole thing. I think Magomed gets a finish over Ben Igli here. This is a big step down in competition from the guys he's fought in the past, and I think he gets it done. And now we move on. Sadibusai taking on Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi. And Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi, just to talk about him for a bit, he's a very good prospect. He did get knocked out by Umalatov, and that was a very impressive win for Umalatov for sure. But he's got really good wins. He's got the win over Ismail Nadeyev. He's got the win over Abduragimov, who just got signed to the UFC, by the way, very recently. He's 16-1. I think he's going to fight at lightweight in the UFC as well, although his last fight was at 185. But anyway, let's move on. That was very sidetracked. I'm just so excited for Abduragimov getting signed to the UFC. I'm picking Sadibusai by decision, but there really is a chance he maybe could get a KO over Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi, because it wasn't really like the biggest shots that Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi gets hurt by, but I think Sadibusai wins a decision. He kind of fights how you would expect a guy with a 6'3" frame with an 80-inch reach at welterweight would fight. Very long, rangy striker, a lot of jabs, a lot of push kicks. He won the tournament last year as well, kind of doing that against Dilano Taylor. He beat Carlos Leal as well, who's also on the card. Rory McDonald as well, who I believe has since retired. So I do have Sadibusai to win this one here. I think he does get it done over Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawi. I think he just kind of jabs and strikes with straight punches, push kicks, front kicks from range, kind of with the style, and wins a decision that way. So give me Sadibusai to beat Al-Silawi. I think he gets it done. And so give me him to win. So that's all my predictions. I apologize once again for the bad audio. We'll be back at it. I think maybe next week I move back to my house. So that's kind of when everything will be back to normal. But hopefully, you guys don't mind the audio too much. I don't think it's too bad. Like, it is pretty bad. But I feel like if you're not listening with headphones, it's probably bearable. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.